Have you been frustrated trying to find birth records, death records, and marriage records for your ancestors? You keep searching and searching and nothing seems to be working. I've got 4 tips in this episode to help you strengthen your search capabilities so you can find your Pennsylvania ancestors. Hello, friends. This is Denise Allen. I am a genealogy researcher, historian, nerd here in Pennsylvania, and I am going to help you locate your pesky Pennsylvania ancestors. The pesky ones are the ones that we cannot locate no matter how hard we search. And these are some tips I'm going to give you to just kind of check off the boxes and make sure that you've done these steps as you're doing your search. Now, these tips apply to computer-based searching, but some of them also apply to just general search in paper records too. So you might want to grab a pen, take some notes, and if you need any help applying these tips or just getting some double check of what you've done, like I did it this way, can you check and see if you got the same answer? Because this is not high school. We can check each other's work now. We can help each other out. We don't have to sit there frustrated alone trying to get the right answer. It's okay to phone a friend. I will be your friend. I have a group called the Inner Circle. You can join us and get help with your Pennsylvania research. There's a small fee to join the research. It's a small cover charge, but as we all know, the best clubs to go to have a small cover charge. Am I right? But back to your Pennsylvania research. Now, the first tip in terms of finding your ancestors in Pennsylvania is always to research the siblings and cousins. I've mentioned this a couple times in the episodes, but for us as genealogists, we tend to just want to do the straight line back in our research and not research the brothers and sisters of our direct line ancestor and their cousins, and also the aunts and uncles and the nieces and nephews, and on it goes, it feels like. But sometimes we might lose track of our ancestor, but we'll pick him or her up in the household of a relative at some point. So they just got missed, or they moved back in with him or her. The family acts as a safety net for people back in the days before there were social welfare programs and so many organizations to support people. It's always worth it to check all those family members. So that's my first tip. And I know it's a pain. I really do. I have gone through this myself, and you just want to get your genealogy done. But the further back you go, the more you've got to just kind of expand that net while you're doing your research. Tip number 2 for vital record research and really locating the records that you want is to work with spelling variations. Now, a lot of people will talk about spelling mistakes or spelling errors. I like to just think of it as variations. It's just a different way to spell the name. I'm not going to pick a favorite. I mean, I have to pick one as I'm doing the records because there's a spot for one on every form. But, maybe they just felt a day, to add an extra L or an extra S. I don't know what was going on. So I just roll with it. I'm very chill about these spelling variations going along. And I have a funny story to tell about that, but it might get me bleeped out. Well, and with spelling variations and your ancestors' surnames, their last names, is to keep in mind that for the most part, all the vowels are interchangeable. So any vowel that's A, E, I, O, U, and sometimes Y, in your ancestor's last name, it's really helpful to think that in a document or in a transcribed document or in a computer index, any of those vowels could be switched out for any other vowel. Keep that in mind when you're doing your research. If you have a last name, and I'll use this name, Wilmer, Wilmer, it could be in there, and it has been Walmer or Walmer with an O or an A. I haven't seen it with an E, but it could be misspelled with an E, Uelmer. You just don't know when people are typing in these transcribed records, or someone was writing down the record, they just squished a letter or they expanded it and made it look like something else. So always interchange all those vowels. The second thing you do with your spellings of your ancestor's name is think to yourself phonetically, in terms of what it sounds like, What other letters could make that sound? Now, for some of us that are old enough that had phonetics in elementary school, when we did our spelling, this is going to come easier. If you're a little younger, you might not have had that phonetic sound, but just practice making the sounds and seeing what other letters you could use to make those sounds. So the easy one is C and K. You know, C can have a K sound. The K sound itself could be CK or just the letter K. What I do with the spelling variations on a theme, is I keep a list for each ancestor of the names I've either found them under or I suspect they could be under. So I kind of keep like a hit list of like, when I search for this person, I'm going to use all these variations of their last name in the search. Now, my next tip is related to the variations of names and how to do it to make it a little simpler on yourself. And that is to use the wildcard characters that are available in search engines. So the things that you are searching while you're searching records are databases. And you don't really see the database, you just see the information you're putting into the database, and then you're seeing the information that comes out of the database. While in that translation process, every database is built with a way to search it using wildcard characters. The site that a lot of people use that does wildcards is Ancestry. And Ancestry allows for two wildcard characters. They allow for a question mark and the asterisk. Now, for the question mark, they allow that to substitute for one letter and one letter only in a name. So for my example, Wilmer, and I talked about the vowels could be switched out, I could put that question mark in for the I. So Wilmer, I'd put W question mark Lmer. And if I search results from Ancestry, it would give me every single name with every single letter in that spot that was in a record. So it could be one of the vowels. It could be like an S. If somebody mistyped an S, they saw the I and they made it an S. Who knows? We don't know what happens in these records sometimes, but it would give me every variation. The other wildcard that Ancestry does is the asterisk. And I use the asterisk a lot with the spelling of some of my ancestors' names, particularly my German ancestors, because a lot of times with their names, it kind of got scrambled in the spelling somewhere. I'll start off their name and then I'll put an asterisk in, and the asterisk will do up to 5 letters in a name. So I have a German ancestor whose last name is Strebig, and I will start off his name while I'm searching, or her name, with STR, and then I put the asterisk in. And then I have a lot more records to search in terms of returns. I really have to use the first name with this because STR, just and let it run, is like too many results to go through. But STR, and if I add a G at the end, because his last name ended in G, that helps sometimes. But sometimes they spelled his name with a CK instead of a G. And so you kind of have to imagine like a German accent, like Strebig, and maybe you get a Strevik, it's like a CH sound. I'm terrible at speaking German, so pay no attention to my terrible, terrible German that I'm trying to do right now. The way I speak German, you would think I have 0 German ancestors, but I really do. I'm like half German. You could try that. Also, the wildcard in the internet searches, check a website. In their help information, type in wildcard, and then you'll get the directions for that website on how they do wildcard searches. And in the show notes for this episode, I included the directions on Ancestry for how to use it. Now, the last recommended way to search for your ancestors, I recommend if you are hitting brick walls, face on, just like running as hard as you can, like the Wile E. Coyote, and it's just like right into the brick wall, is to use the original clerks index for the records that you're searching. Now, for any set of records that has ever been kept on human beings, there's usually a clerk or a minister or a priest that was involved in the keeping of those records. And there's some way that those records were organized when the person did it. Often the records are either kept in chronological order or alphabetical order by last name. And usually in the front or back of one of these books, they're usually ledger books early on, they have an index of where to find a person within the giant book. So just like a regular book has an index, in the back of the subjects, the places, the names of what is in the book, these ledger books of records of our ancestors are also indexed by the people that created the books. As you're looking at digital images on whatever website, just take the time to scroll in the images to the front or the very back and see if you can find an index. The easy way to do that, usually the images are numbered 1 to whatever, is just type in the box 1 and it'll take you right to the beginning and you can start paging through the images or scrolling through the images and seeing if you can find an index in there. And then look to figure out how that index is organized. It's usually by last name. Sometimes they get a little more complicated with some of our other records in Pennsylvania, and I'll do an episode at some point on how to use those indexes, because it doesn't apply to vital records too much. It usually applies to deeds and to wills and to estates. You do want to find that original clerk's index and see how they organized it. In previous episodes on vital records, I talked about how the Department of Health in Pennsylvania has an original index for the birth and death certificates, and that original index for the publicly available records is at the Pennsylvania State Archives online on their website. And it's so worth searching because you can see how the clerk at that time organized your ancestors' records. And as I mentioned before, if there was a correction to their record in terms of the name, or there was a delayed birth certificate where they applied later, that would be in that index too, which is really handy. Look for the original clerk's index in whatever record set you are searching, with birth and death registrations and with marriage licenses and with any record that you're looking at. And if you like these tips, I have even more that I share in my newsletter. I call it PA Ancestors Discoveries because I'm always discovering something new about my Pennsylvania ancestors, and I'm looking for people to discover more about theirs. You can subscribe to that either in the link in the show notes or on PennsylvaniaAncestors.com. And I'd love to see you join the list. This is Denise Allen again, and I wish you many discoveries on your Pennsylvania ancestors.